Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Penelope Caamaño. Hello to everyone here at Weber Gallagher in Philadelphia who doesn't know me. I'm one of your partners, workers' compensation partners in Bedminster. I've been here for around 2 years, and I want to say hello to all our people remotely. My Bedminster people who almost didn't make it since we had a transformer explode in our building. But that's the usual when we have a lot of technology and computers and a lot of things going on. But I wanted to welcome everyone here today. I want to welcome everyone to Weber Gallagher's first Hispanic Heritage Luncheon hosted by the Diversity Committee. And we're very, very excited that we're taking on such a strong role within the firm to bring about diversity in our workplace and beyond our workplace. And I must thank Carolyn Mirabili. She's the chair of our diversity committee, and thank you very much. She helped recruit me recently onto the committee, and I'm very, very happy to be there. I also wanted to thank a couple of people without whom this event would never have occurred, and it's Jennifer Williams. Where are you, Jennifer? Hi, Jen. And Angel Perez. And where's Lexi? Is Lexi here? Unfortunately, Lexi couldn't make it. Today we have two dynamic people of Hispanic descent coming to speak with us about their culture in this exciting month for people of Hispanic heritage. Me, myself, I'm a first-generation American. I was born here. My mom is from Cuba. She had come here to escape communism, and my father is from Spain, and they both came here as teenagers. So I grew up speaking Spanish. It was my first language, and I was the first person in my family to go to college and to law school. And it's exciting for me that the firm is doing this because it shows me that being Hispanic in our country and in our workplaces, we've taken on a new role. And we are now expanding all over the country, all over the planet, our language, our customs, our people. And it's very important to me as a Latina, and as I see my children grow, to have that be incorporated as part of their heritage. Being Hispanic is not about color. It's not about a skin tone. It's not about a particular country you're in. There's a unity amongst us all from all different countries. Jose here is from Ecuador. Yep. I have from Cuba and Spain, and Mia was just telling me she has from being Puerto Rican, she's also Japanese, she has, what else did you say you were?
My father is half black and half Japanese.
Half black Japanese, so we're all like a melting pot, just like the United States is a melting pot of everything. Well, we've been doing it, Hispanics have been doing it for a very, very long time, because we all kind of come from different places, but there's a cultural unity that bonds us together. And as this country grows, despite the many problems that we still do have, I really feel that we are rising to the top of our society, and I think it's very impressive. And I have here these two young people who I'm totally impressed with their resumes because they're at least 10 years younger than I am. So, you know what, good for you. I celebrate both of you. You are an American success story, and we're very, very proud to have you here at Gallagher Bassett. So now let me do a little introduction. Oh my goodness, at Weber Gallagher. Sorry so much. I was on a phone call on the way here working while I was driving from New Jersey with Gallagher Bassett, which is one of our clients, and I apologize for that. Okay. We are so excited here to have two exceptionally notable panelists joining us today. Our first panelist is renowned Latin American chef, Jose Garces, who translates his rich cultural traditions and culinary vision into personal dining experiences through Garces, a Philadelphia-based hospitality group. Taking a heartfelt and creative approach to time-honored recipes and dishes, Garces operates numerous restaurants including Amada, Distrito, Tinto, Village Whiskey, JG Domestic, Volver, and the Old Bar, to name a few. Actually, you just told me we were talking about the one in New York, Ortiz. Ortiz. On 41st Street, where we just opened up our New York office on Times Square. So I will be sure to come in and visit.
Perfect.
The group also operates Garces Events, a full-service catering and event division. The Garces Foundation, a philanthropic organization dedicated to Philadelphia's underserved immigrant community, and Luna Farm, Chef Garces' 40-acre farm in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Our second panelist is Judge Mia Robert Perez, a 34-year-old Latina millennial. Yeah,
I'm not 34 anymore, but thank you.
Oh.
I was 34 when I was sworn in.
And so that makes you what?
37.
Okay, but you're still young. Who was recently elected to Philadelphia's Court of Common Pleas, who brings diversity to a homogeneous bench of judges. Born and raised in Philadelphia, she has been practicing law for over a decade, where she served as a public defender, trial attorney, and adjunct professor at Temple School of Law. I told you she was very, very impressive. She also established her own law firm, Perez Law, which specialized in criminal defense and family law. In 2015, she became one of the youngest judges in history of Philadelphia's Court of Common Pleas. I'm so impressed by both of them, and please join me in welcoming them both to Weber Gallagher. Oh, and thank you to Jose for bringing our lunch here, because everyone is enjoying it. I can see from the looks on everyone's faces, it's delicious. It's delicious. Oh, and I also wanted to say thank you to you for coming. Sorry. I'm so sorry. We have Chef Garces' books that he signed for all of us. So you can all take a copy should you want to take it home and make some of these delicious recipes.
Definitely, yeah.
My husband will be so, so happy. Okay, we're going to start with Jose, if that's
Sure,
okay?
yeah.
Okay, can you tell us about your background, anything that we haven't said? I'm sure there's a lot more to you than what I just said on record. But and how has your heritage shaped your success?
Sure. Hello. So my background, my parents were both Ecuadorian. They immigrated from Ecuador to Chicago in the late 1960s, 1967. My dad went to University of Illinois Chicago for engineering, and we basically grew up in a Ecuadorian American household in a Polish and Mexican neighborhood in Chicago. And that's, my upbringing really has a lot to do with my parents trying to establish our Latin roots and teach us, the ways of, being Ecuadorian, and usually through food. My mom and grandma were amazing cooks, and so I spent a lot of time in the kitchen with them. But at the same time, I had to adapt to my world outside of the home, which was growing up in, as I said, Chicago, and getting adjusted to what it was like to be Latin American at an early age.
Now, you said it was your grandmother and your mother who fostered in you the love of food.
Yeah.
So you have then taken that and taken your comfort food and made your empire.
Yes. And well, I would say that I've looked at different Latin American countries for inspiration throughout my career. My roots, really my palate, I think came from my mom and grandma. My appreciation for herbs and sofrito and these really comforting Latin traditions. But as Penelope said, I have a copy of The Latin Road Home here. So in that book, it's a travel log, it's a memoir. It really describes how I view food, but it's an homage to 5 Spanish-speaking countries. So Spain, Ecuador, Mexico, Cuba, and Peru. And these are places that I've traveled to and have spent time in really trying to understand the culture through my lens, with a chef's lens, and how do I bring those traditional recipes and traditions back to a market like Philadelphia? And so where does that juxtaposition happen? So that's been kind of my study and what I've been able to do throughout my career.
Now, are your restaurants based on different countries, like different types of food? Would you, for example, would one of your restaurants in Philadelphia be Ecuadorian based versus another being Spanish based?
Yeah, so a lot of the restaurants have a thematic purpose. So we really started, I started in 2005 with Amada. So Amada was based off my travels in Andalusia, the southern part of Spain. So after finishing culinary school in Chicago, I was French classically trained in Chicago at the culinary school, but I decided I wanted to go abroad, go to Europe. So I couldn't speak French. I knew I could speak Spanish, so I decided to go to Spain and really learn what it was like to be in a European kitchen, learn their style, their thought processes on cooking. Came back to New York. I spent 5 years cooking in New York. And then I was here in 2000. I opened 2 restaurants with Steven Starr, Alma de Cuba and El Vez. And in 2005, after all those years of kind of cooking and toiling in kitchens, I decided, okay, it was time for me to open my own restaurant. And that was Amada in 2005. And it was Spanish inspired. I looked around the landscape in Philadelphia at that time and noted that there weren't any Spanish restaurants or Spanish tapas restaurants. Immediately after I opened, there were a few that popped up, but that's that's part of it. And so I was really happy to bring my experiences from Spain to a restaurant like Amada. And then throughout my career, I really looked at Philadelphia as kind of a great prototype market. So as various concepts opened, they usually were inspired by a country or cuisine.
So delicious.
Oh, thank you.
So, what I have to ask this question because my husband made me ask it. So, how did you come to be on the Iron Chef?
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah. Yeah. So Iron Chef was a really a great chapter in my career. I had a lot of fun. Once I opened Amada in 2005, I started to get some notoriety national. And so in 2007, the producers of Iron Chef America were looking to cast the next Iron Chef. So that was a show where you would compete against other chefs to become an Iron Chef. So I didn't make the first cut in 2007 to be on that show, but they brought me on to compete against Bobby Flay in Iron Chef America, which I won, Battle Melon. Thank you. And then in 2009, I was asked to come on and be a cast member on Next Iron Chef. I won that competition and became an Iron Chef. So it was a lot of fun, a great journey, a great exploration into food and competition, which is still food and competition is still very, very hot. But it pushed a lot of my limits as a chef and as a person from time to time. A lot of it's pretty stressful hour. The hour is real too.
Just one more question before I go on to Mia. You have a lot of philanthropic activities and events that you support. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think that's a wonderful thing that you've taken your success, you're sharing it with our community, with the community, you're helping others that are less advantaged, that have less advantages and are still struggling. And could you tell us a little bit of what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So my ex-wife and I, we started a foundation called the Garces Foundation. It's about almost 6 years ago now. And really the thought was, back in those days, I really was thinking, how could I help this community? And at the same time, our community, our restaurant community, really employs a lot of Latin American, and especially in Philadelphia, a lot of the Mexican community, in particular Puebla. And so, I was really just starting to brainstorm, how can we really assist these folks? What is the best way to give back to this community? And so we decided to start a few programs. So one is a community health day, and just to go back a little bit, there was how it started was there was a dishwasher or a butcher. His name was Felipe Lopez, who wouldn't go to the doctor because he thought he was going to get deported. So he was afraid to go for several years, and it turns out he ended up having cancer and passed. And so that was the moment where we said, okay, we have to do something. So we started community health days where we do free dental screening, diabetes, cholesterol, just overall health checkups for these folks. And then as a follow-up, if there's additional care needed, we point them in the right way in which they can get additional health care. And then we also do an EREL, which is a program at the Bach School in South Philadelphia, where this community mostly lives, where we do basically like a job training through literacy through job training for the restaurant worker. So anyone who works in the hospitality business can go there, learn English, get job training, and ascend, hopefully throughout their careers.
That is a wonderful thing. Thank you so much on behalf of everyone for that.
Thank you.
Because you're helping a lot of other people. Now we're going to go on to the Honorable Mia Perez. Can you please share with us how your heritage has shaped your success?
Good afternoon, everyone. So I actually was born and raised in Philadelphia. My mom came from the island, from Puerto Rico, in the 1950s. She is one of 7. They immigrated to the mainland, to New York first. They were in Brooklyn for a couple of years. And then my grandfather moved the family to Philadelphia, where he opened up a tiny corner store at 7th and Cumberland. I am the first person in my family to go to law school. I am the first person on my mom's side to have a college degree and to finish that out. Being Latina has shaped a lot of what I do. If you look at my resume, I started out at the Public Defender's Office here in Philadelphia, and a lot of that had to do with representation. When I was growing up, my family was mixed. My dad was Black and Japanese, my mom was Puerto Rican. So growing up when I did, which is primarily the 80s, there were pockets of mixed families, but they were few and far between at the time. And my parents really were concerned about making sure that my brother and I were raised in a community where we felt included. So they moved us to the Germantown section of Philadelphia, which is in the northwest, just below Chestnut Hill and Mount Airy. And at the time in the 80s, it was kind of we're going to call it transitional neighborhood. But it allowed us to be around other kids that were of mixed ethnicity. Not necessarily the ethnicities that we were, but biracial families or families that at least had mixed religious backgrounds, so that we felt included. We didn't be like the odd ones out. But being Latina really did shape the path of my career. So I started out at the Defender Association of Philadelphia. And part of the reason I did that was because I was concerned about the treatment of minorities, both particularly African Americans and Latinos in Philadelphia. The representation that we have based on the numbers in Philadelphia, in the legal profession in particular, are strikingly small. Additionally, the bench, even now as it stands, is not representative of the population that we have of Latinos in Philadelphia. We have done a much better job at electing judges that are African American, but in terms of seeing Latinos ascend to the bench, they are few and far between. I believe our current numbers are 3 and 1 gentleman who's Portuguese, and so we count him, but just because we knew the numbers. But you know, it's one of those where we're not necessarily reflecting the population that is before us. And so disproportionately speaking, African Americans and Latinos are making up the bulk of what we're seeing on the criminal side, and quite frankly, the family side. Because again, those two sometimes, they tend to overlap, the criminal side as well as the family dependency side. And because of that, we don't necessarily have people who look like us or speak our language or understand some of the cultural issues that come from being Latino in the city. When I opened up my own firm, I specialized in criminal defense and family law. In particular, I handled capital cases. I was there was one other Latino lawyer, an Ecuadorian gentleman, who was one of my mentors, who did capital cases. But again, few and far between. And those are the most serious cases that we have in the criminal justice system. We are talking about taking someone's life. And to have individuals who didn't understand the cultural balances, for those of you, and I think most of you probably have not done criminal work, but there may be some, in capital death penalty cases, we go back generations when we're doing mitigation work. So we're not just looking at the individual or the defendant before you. You're looking at the generations before, because many things are passed down generationally. Mental health, drug and alcohol issues, and family issues as a whole. What the family composition is. Sexual abuse is often tracked through generations of the family. And those are cultural. So there are aspects of that, whether or not the mental health treatment was acknowledged, whether it was treated, whether literacy, whether it be literacy in terms of the Spanish language or even literacy in terms of English, is there. individuals who are deaf. ASL is not as widely known on the island as it is here. And so early intervention is not there like it would be necessarily in the mainland. And so all of those things affect an individual's capacity to grow, learn, adapt, and change. Those all become factors for mitigation work. So it is very important, even when we're talking about legal cases, whether you're talking about a civil case and understanding your clients, or a company in terms of marketing or issues that you may have when targeting certain populations. It's extremely important to have people who come from that background because the experience is different. I currently sit in the Southwest Division of criminal court. So our criminal court is done by sections of the city currently. So I'm assigned to Southwest. So I have everything from 76 over to the Delaware County border, from City Line Avenue through past the airport. That would be my territory. Now, there are populations, specifically in South Philadelphia, as well as North Philadelphia, that have very high Latino populations. My husband is probably the reason I'm not sitting in North or in what we call East Division, and that's because he is a sergeant with the Philadelphia Police. And so we don't want to have a conflict with me sitting in the same area in which he patrols. It's an ongoing fight between the two of us because I would love to go sit in East. However, my husband, who is Puerto Rican, grew up in East Division, which is the poorest section of the city by far. It is below the national poverty line. It is startling to see how few the numbers are that are able to complete school and the resources that are in that particular area that has been ravaged, in particular by the heroin epidemic. It's important for him to be there because he grew up there and he believes very much in this idea of community policing that we hear a lot about. And since he grew up in it and he grew up in that neighborhood, and he has survived a lot of tragedy in his life because of that neighborhood and because of what was there. He lost his brother to a homicide when he was 26 years old. His brother was 18 years old. All of those things affect who he is and has made him someone who's invaluable, I think, to that community. So while I would love to be there because I do believe that it's important to see someone who represents who you are when you're looking up at the judge, I think it's equally valuable to have someone who's there and on the ground every day who represents your community as well and is an advocate as well as protecting your community. So I think there's a lot of ways in which my heritage has affected the work that I've done, my career choices, and the constant evolution of who I am.
Thank you so much. You both are very, very, very inspiring. You inspire me to do more on behalf of our culture as well. I have to say, growing up in the United States from a Latin family, there's a lot of culture shock that happens along the way. I grew up in a very blue-collar town where everyone was mixed as well. Everyone just went to public school, and if you didn't speak English, then you hung out with someone else who spoke both Spanish and English, and your cousins helped you, and your family and your sense of family. We grew up with a big sense of family ties, which hopefully we don't lose as we take part of the American dream. Going to college is also a culture shock because you're not used to being away from your family. You're not used to people who grow up with certain privileges that you don't have. I know when I went to college, now I know so much more. So when my kids go to college, I didn't know that there was a person that could help you do your essay or find you a scholarship or do that. My parents just said, here, we'll write you the check to apply for as many colleges as you want to go to, Penelope, but it's up to you. So I was fortunate enough. I went to public school. I had a nice guidance counselor who took me under her wing, and I think that's what I'm seeing here with you both. You both have mentored people in your own right in different ways, but it's that mentoring that really helps us continue to grow and pass it on to the next generations. Our children are very fortunate, but there's a lot of children out there who are not. So do we have any questions here from anybody here at Weber Gallagher?
Can I just speak on the mentorship? Sure. Mentorship is something that I think that we think is just for children, and it's not. And I think as attorneys, it's often difficult to reach out to individuals and frankly ask them to be our mentor. But it is so very important. There's a gentleman, Pedro Rivera. Pedro was my mentor in high school. He was an attorney working at a headhunter agency at the time. And I met him doing mock trial in high school. And I know, I was a big nerd. But, Pedro saw something in me, and he kept in touch with me after the first time he met me. And we checked in with each other, and he constantly was there during the cycles of my growth. When I started college, he invited me to come work at a firm where he was the new head of recruitment, and it was Dwayne Morris. And at Dwayne Morris, all of a sudden, I had access to individuals I never had access to when I was growing up. Attorneys, women attorneys, people who were there to talk to, who were willing to open up their door. And when it came time to apply to law school, I had, at the time, the hiring partner write my letter of recommendations for law school. Those are the types of people who have checked in and made sure that I was okay along the way, who took time out of their schedules. And I know everyone is busy. Everyone has billable hours. Everyone has family obligations. That being said, don't forget to reach back, and don't forget to reach forward. I still have mentors now. I call them, whether it's to talk about the greatest thing that just happened to me, or to vent about a horrible, rough day, or to talk about my next career move. Because, you know, I was 33 when I got elected, 34 when I was sworn in. It's going to be a long time on this bench. So I need to figure out if this is where I want to stay. Do I want to try something new? Where is it going to go in 20 years? You know, always be looking ahead. But I say that because I don't think any of us gets where we need to be without other people. And please remember that when we're talking about young people in particular, and reaching outside of even just who may or may not look like you, to be a mentor and to be someone who can be their champion even when they don't know that they need one.
Interesting that you should say that. At our last diversity meeting, we were talking about trying to have a mentorship program here at Weber Gallagher, even for support staff or other attorneys who come in who are diverse, and help them ease the process, help them make it easier for them to settle in and be accommodated and learn the ropes. You know, as you know, now I think a lot of us, we're going to high school, we're going to college, they're Hispanic, but as you continue to grow and thrive, there are less and less people up there that you can turn to guide you in those steps. Personally, as a female Latina lawyer, you get to a certain point, there's not that many of us up there. So I think what you both said today inspired me to reach back and try to help other people. We have here an intern, Angel. He's from Camden, New Jersey, and he is the most Angel, stand up. Angel. And a lot of our aspirations are in Angel, because I think this young man has a wonderful future ahead of him. And just speaking with him for the first time several weeks ago, I'm like, Angel, I want to be part of your life, and I really want to talk to you. And I must commend the people here at Weber Gallagher. They've taken him under his wing, or under our wing. PJ, Ellen Ragone, a bunch of other people. This is exactly where I would like to see Weber Gallagher go and grow, and even amongst ourselves within the support staff and attorneys, help each other out. Let's be a firm that embraces other people. And the fact that you're here today, this is our first time that we're doing this, I hope we're setting a precedent, and this is hopefully a tradition that we're going to continue year in and year out. And can we reach out to you in the future to come back to us, or maybe team up with us to do some type of charity work? Because I think that would be an exciting thing for us to team up together to do this. Do we have any other questions from anyone? Yes, please.
So you both talked about the challenges facing the community. What, in your opinion, is the most pressing challenge now, and how we all, female side of the legal context, assist and be supportive of the things that happen?
Yeah, please.
I'm starting because I have to punt. And the reason is, based on the judicial rules of conduct, I can't talk about political issues. I'm prohibited from doing that. So I am going to pass.
Well, I'll be pretty quick. You know, I think clearly immigration reform is something that needs to occur in the country. You know, to whatever level it is, just clarity on where people stand. I think you know, we have a workforce that, you know, from agriculture to construction to hospitality, they're, you know, really the lifeline behind some of our economies. So I just feel like it's fair. And so that's just like the biggest thing that I would say, just immigration reform. You all, I think, can help a little bit.
Yes, we can. I agree. I can't get too political either because I'm here with the firm as well. But I agree with you that immigration reform does really need to be addressed in this country. My grandfather got deported 3 times before he was able to stay. And so I have a feel and I have empathy for a lot of these people. Everyone wants to be here for a reason. Even though we sometimes we critique our system and everything, and we know there's a lot to do, but everyone wants to be here, and that's for the reason. And you both are an example of why everyone wants to be here. I want to thank. Is there any more questions, Cheryl?
Barriers are seen and unseen, right? And so often you don't, I mean, I'm also a woman, so there's kind of and I worked
Double whammy.
A double whammy, especially because I did trial, right? The number of criminal defense trial, women who are doing criminal defense trial work, I used to be able to count on one hand, privately, not in the public defender's office. Only either having a business, working for a firm where they specialized in white-collar criminal defense or criminal defense as a whole, either on the state and federal level. I used to be able to count on one hand. It might be less than that since I've left. And there are many reasons, I think, for that. That being said, being Latina and being a woman, there are different hurdles. I used to work at a firm in the suburbs, and I'll never forget when I was hired. I was in a room with all men, all white males, and they were pushing for me to come. And I couldn't understand why, because I did not fit into this firm. There were maybe 3 women working in the entire firm. There were no minorities. And I decided to take them at their word that they were interested in diversity, interested in having people more represent better their clientele. That being said, after a year, it was pretty apparent that there are things that are for show and things because they want real change. And I think that we know those things and we know that feeling. And I knew then that my advancement in that particular setting was not going to happen for many reasons that had nothing to do with the work that I did. The trick is understanding that, realizing that there's a wall there and figuring out a way to go around the wall. And that's not always easy, and it's terrifying many times to do that. But it doesn't mean that there's not another way to get around it. It's recognizing that it's there and figuring out a way around it.
I think for me, I have this kind of innate entrepreneurial spirit that I didn't even know existed within me. But as I came out of culinary school, I really was just, focusing on becoming the best chef that I possibly could become. So that just required work. It required me to, roll up my sleeves and just do it every day. And so I don't think throughout that period I felt any sort of barrier that was something that was keeping me down. I would say, as you get closer to becoming a business owner, and you may not have like the financial wherewithal to invest $1 million in what it cost. I mean, this was in 2005. What it cost to open a restaurant? That could certainly be a barrier to someone who's talented and passionate. Luckily for me, I had some banking partners who believed in. Took a big risk. I basically signed my life away in an SBA loan and was able to pull it off. And from that success, I was able to grow my business and what I do. But I would say I was one of the fortunate few that was able to do that.
I also think that it's important to be vocal and to speak out for yourself and for others. If you see a problem, don't be afraid. You have to let people know what your thought process is and your expectations as well, because we all work hard. Mm-hmm. And I think that what makes us succeed is that you have to, if a path is not laid out for you, you have to create that path for yourself. Any other questions? I think I'm going to call it a wrap so we can enjoy some more delicious Jose Garces food.
Great. Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming.